Hey guys, it's Adam. And today I'm going to talk to you about the appendix and if it's still useful in the body. So the structure of the appendix, it's a vestigial hollow tube, which vestigial is it means it doesn't really have much of a use in the body anymore, kind of like the wisdom teeth, the appendix, um, you know, tonsils, certain things that just aren't as useful as they were in the past. So it's a hollow tube that's closed at one end and is attached to the other end of the cecum. So it's on the large intestine. It's like a pouch at the end of the large intestine, and it really doesn't have much of a use. It gets inflamed a lot over at that spot where it's at, and that inflammation causes it to rupture and do all these other things. So the structure of the appendix, it's not in a great place. It's also right where the small intestine empties all of its contents, which leads to the problem of when it ruptures, things get septic real quick. So the appendix is usually 8 to 10 centimeters wide. It's about 3 to 4 inches long, so it's pretty tiny, and it's less than half an inch wide, so it is super, super thin. It has muscular walls that are capable of expelling the cecum, expelling into the cecum the mucus secretions of the appendiceal walls, or any of the intestinal contents that have worked their way into the structure. If anything blocks the opening of the appendix or prevents it from expelling its contents into the cecum, appendicitis may occur. And that was in an article I had looked up about the appendix by Ugur Bekisi. So the function of the appendix, there was kind of a bunch of there wasn't contradictory reports, but there was studies that basically came up inconclusive, and the data didn't fall within the realm of statistically significant to actually prove a lot of these things. One that I found pretty interesting is a case study by Professor Kuji. He considers the apex to be a vestigial part of the body now, so again, it doesn't have much of a use anymore, but he thought the appendix could be a priming site for ulcerative colitis, so basically where the bacteria, it gives it like a breeding ground to make it more, to make the foods that you eat digest easier. It makes a lot of these processes easier on your body. And this study showed that, intestinal bacteria could be potentially important to gut health. According to another study I found by Zakar Zawiza Gondik, the appendix should be left in because acute appendicitis is uncommon, but can be deadly if it occurs. So basically, if you get acute appendicitis, what happens is your body, that spot where it's at, it ruptures. But when it ruptures, bacteria can get into your blood. Once your bacteria gets into your blood, then your body tries to fight it off there, but at that point it's gone septic, and that can be very harmful to your body. Appendicitis itself will not kill you, but the sepsis could. And although, so its overall cause, the function of it is it's really thought to be the safe house for the bacteria for the gut to thrive in, make it easier on our bodies to digest the certain foods that we eat. And there's 2 studies that I found about that. So, looking at the evolution of the appendix, there was at one point a function. There was one study by Professor Bakit, and it's actually pretty interesting. So he thinks that the appendix was originally there when we were mammals that were much more primitive, and when we had to go collect leaves and stuff to eat, that actually your appendix was there to digest leaves, and that's where that helpful bacteria came in. And so what potentially could have happened is over time that process changed and made it so it was easier for us to eat veggies and greens and stuff, and that's why that gut health is so important. So you get more of those nutrients out. But it's very hard. There hasn't been a lot of studies that have been super conclusive about that. And then with the evolution of the appendix, with it having less uses now, one of the big problems we run into is appendicitis. And appendicitis is the inflammation of the appendix. This can be super painful. You might not always know that it's appendicitis right away because it can present itself as, being constipated, being this or that, because the pain area can be the same as a lot of these other potential health problems you could have. And there was the study that, the ruptured appendix won't kill you, but peritonitis can lead to bacteria in the blood. And like I said, that was sepsis. And then that was a study done by Mary L. Schreiber that points out the classic considerations with appendicitis and with these other diseases. How far back does appendicitis go? So it was documented in the 1500s. The etiology, so like kind of the shape of the appendix has changed since then, and it's become more recognizable. Although you still might not know you have appendicitis, until it's started to rupture, because it happened. It's a very fast process. And so if you don't know that you have it, you head to the ER, get it taken care of. And this was a study done by Claudia Wallace that actually found out that appendicitis was documented 500 years ago. So, it still hasn't changed its function too much in the last 600 years. It can be removed with no super severe causes to the body besides risks from normal surgeries. It's not an invasive surgery at all. Very simple. One thing that's interesting, there was a scientist that did a study with mammals, and he found that 500 mammals still have their appendix. So this means that does give that theory of the leaves quite a bit of backing behind it, because the appendix shouldn't still exist in more than 500 creatures if it doesn't have a use. And if it has use in animals, in mammals, that very well could be because of leaves and, having to eat things that we don't eat because we can find more calorie-dense food. And that was a study by Mohammed Tima. He figured that out about the leaves and the appendix. So in acute appendicitis, the appendix ruptures just 15% of the time. There's a significant increase in the perforation. So basically it becomes giant, and then it gets, then it's inflamed, and then it ruptures. So if you catch it right when it perforates, you're usually okay. You're usually safe. The position that the appendix sits in your body can cause CTs to misdiagnose the appendicitis and mistake it for something that isn't true. This could lead to higher rates of the appendix needing to be removed. And this was a study done by Zakarza-Wiska-Gondek. And that other study about the increased perforation rates was done by Faith Basak. According to another study done by the European Surgical Research Group, taking the appendix out was actually considered safer than leaving it in. This is a completely different study from the one earlier, but even though there is thought to be the physiological uses, it still is safer to remove the appendix. And that's that. Thanks, guys.